What's going on, everybody? When Pastor Joe asked me if I wanted to share my testimony, I said sure. I told him I was going to need about an hour. He told me I had 3 to 5 minutes, so I told him I got 15 minutes to go. So hope you guys get some popcorn. Back into my faith. So things were going good. I get a call at my job about 16 weeks in, telling me that she got rushed to the hospital. Her water broke. They couldn't do nothing at Holy Family, so they rushed her to Boston. By the time we got there, the baby was no longer with us. So we were obviously heartbroken. And you know what I mean? It was a very, very tough time. So I took it as the biggest test of my faith. Not God saying, like, I took your baby, what are you going to do? But more like, when you lost the baby, are you going to blame me? Or are you going to continue to look for me? So I'm like, you know what, Lord? Like, and it was my fault because when we found out she was pregnant, I said that I was going to leave the pregnancy in chance. And I doubted a lot, which I know I shouldn't have. So that's why I felt like it was the biggest test of my faith when we lost it. More like, you're going to blame me, you're going to continue to look for me. So I'm like, you know what, Lord? It wasn't your fault. I'm going to continue to look for you. We're going to get through this. Amen. So the money that I put away for the baby, I told Carmen, I'm like, you know what? Let's just take a trip. Let's get away, clear our head, and let's do what we got to do. So we booked a trip to Punta Cana for her birthday, and the day before we left, we found out she was pregnant again. So same thing, I was like, you know what, God? Like, it's in your hands. Like, this time I'm not doubting. Like, I'm not worried. It's in your hands. So we had an appointment because she was considered high risk now. They needed our put the supplies in. The day that they scheduled for her to get the supplies was the original due date for the baby we lost. So I'm a mess walking into the hospital. So I called my cousin in Orlando. She's a pastor. I'm like, cousin, can you just say a prayer for me? She was like, cousin, I have no problem saying a prayer for you. She's like, look, I don't talk to you. I really don't know you. I don't know what type of life you lead. Like, do you have a relationship with Christ? Like, you know what I mean? She kind of made me feel like crap. So she prayed. I sat in the corner and I just started praying. And I told God, at that time, I was doing a lot of things that I shouldn't do. Like, my best friend was weed, smoking a lot of it, selling even more of it. So I told God basically, like, listen, I don't got nothing. I enjoy smoking weed, selling, that's all I like. I'm like, you give me my baby girl, I'll stop all of it right now. And from that day, I haven't sold another bag of weed, I haven't smoked another joint. And the thing is, like, going forward with this pregnancy, like, it was just bad news after bad news after bad news. Crazy that 19 weeks she was already starting to open up, so they had to admit her. And the doctor basically said that if she gives birth, we're just gonna lay the baby on her chest until it passes away. And I freaked out, like, what are you talking about? That baby comes out breathing, you're gonna do whatever you can to make sure that baby lives. And he was saying that technically if it was born before that the lungs would not be nearly close to developed for them to be able to resuscitate and keep the baby alive. So they said in order for her to have a 50% chance of resuscitation, she would have to make at least 24 weeks. So the day before she turned 24 weeks, they gave her a steroid shot. And throughout the whole pregnancy, like I said, bad news after bad news after bad news. And it's crazy because, like, I was not worried. Like, I was at peace with the whole situation to the point that she was getting angry at me. She's like, yo, you seem like you don't care. You don't hear what they're telling us. You don't even, like, I can't explain it, but, like, hey, we're good. Like, we're good. And I'm the type of person that I do not see signs. Unless God literally just trips me and looks around and, like, laughs, like, I did not get signs. And throughout this whole pregnancy, like, I was catching signs after signs. So I remember I was going to get an oil change for her. So she's admitted now. So it's 19 weeks she hasn't left the hospital. So I was going to get an oil change and I was praying. And I was passing St. Lucy's Church and we're going. As soon as I finished praying, the bell started ringing. There's not one car in the parking lot. Like, there's nobody there. Like, chances are it's on a timer or whatever. But it was just that the moment I finished praying, it went off. So I'm like, wow. So then I called her after the oil change. I'm like, do you need me to get anything from the house before I come up? She's like, check the mail. Probably haven't checked the mail since I've been here. So I'm like, all right. She's right, because I haven't checked the mail. So I go to check the mail. We live in a complex, so everybody's mailbox is together. Out of everybody's mailbox, on our mailbox, there's an angel. There's a sticker of an angel. So I was just like, wow. I'm like, all right, guys, if I didn't get the bells, I'm getting this one. And so long story short, 24 weeks, they give her a steroid shot. 4 days later, she gives birth to Sariah. Sariah was born 24 weeks, 4 days. She was 13 inches long, 1 pound, 7 ounces. Like, she was so tiny that I brought some of the things that they had her in the hospital. First of all, this was her the very first day she was born. 13 inches, 1 pound, 7 ounces. And like, it's crazy when I say that, and like, I don't understand if people could really grasp it, but she was so tiny that they had to use diapers that they used for baby dolls. This was the diaper that she was wearing. This was the diaper she was wearing. This was her outfit.
Oh my goodness.
She was so tiny that this was the cuff that they had around her arms. And then, it doesn't finish there. So she spent 163 days in the NICU, 153 days in the NICU, came home for 2 days, and then she went back for like another 50-something days. On her first birthday, we ended up going back to the hospital. She had an earache, and then from that earache, we developed that she needed a trach, and she needed 2 feeding tubes. So she went and got a trach, she had 2 feeding tubes. About a year after that, she needed to go on oxygen. So she was on 24-hour oxygen. And then it gets worse. So then she got diagnosed with a disease called PCH. I cannot say the medical term, you could ask my assistant, she'll be able to tell you. But the case was so rare that she was the first case in like the last 12 years. And that there was no cure, that nature would have to run its course, which eventually she would need a lung transplant. But they would never be able to do a lung transplant on her because she aspirated. For being born so early, her left vocal cord was so weak that it didn't close. So she couldn't even drink liquids until she was about 3. So she was doing good on the oxygen, so they said let us run out the oxygen as long as we can go cross that bridge when we get there. So they nominated us to make a wish. So we took a Make-A-Wish trip to Disney.
Amen.
And that trip literally changed everything. She was on 5 liters of oxygen 24 hours a day. The air concentrators they give us for the planes only go up to 3 liters. So they gave us 6 batteries, told us each battery was good for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and they were fully charged. And we got to take her NICU nurse with us. The time we got from the house to the airport, we were already on the 5th battery. So we dropped the oxygen down to 1 on the concentrator throughout the whole flight, and we made it to Florida safely. And we kept her on the 1 liter throughout the whole trip, and she did fine. So coming home, we told her doctors that. So the doctor was amazed, so we dropped it to 3. She did so good on 3 for a while, dropped it to 2, to 1, to eventually she had no oxygen. She just had her trach. Then one of her feeding tubes came out. So fast forward a little bit later, they said she's doing good. They took off the oxygen. They gave us an estimated date about capping her and seeing how she'll do fine. So she did fine with that, to the point that they're like, we're gonna give her 6 months and then we'll take her to the hospital and take the trach out and see how she reacts without it. Well, they said 6 months, like 3 months into it, Sariah was still stubborn as a baby. She pulled it out. So now we freaked out and we flew to the hospital. Nobody at Lawrence General knew how to put a trach back in. So we immediately said, send us to Boston, send us to Boston. So they're freaking out, and they're freaking us out now because they're freaking out. And then by the time we got to Boston, the doctors were like, all right, well, we're 3 months early to see her rise out. And then from that day on, she lost her trach. And then just recently, about a year and a half, 2 years now, her other feeding tube came up. And then it's crazy because I think about it is that doctor's exact words when they admitted Carmen was, you should really think about assassinating this pregnancy. And I legit told the doctor that he was crazy. I'm like, they just told me in the ultrasound that my baby was 100% healthy, that you want to tell me to assassinate my pregnancy. I'm like, you are crazy. I'm like, you'll have to take me out of here chains before anything like that happens. And it's just unbelievable because my baby girl's going to be 9 years old next month. My favorite criticism is, do not tell me what God can't do, because I see what He can do. And I live with it. So that's pretty much it.